As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Family, I need you to hear me today. Your emotions may be real, but they are not always the truth. Just because you feel unworthy does not mean you are unworthy. Just because you feel forgotten does not mean God has forgotten you. We have to learn how to separate what we feel from what is true, because our feelings are fleeting, but God's love is unshakable. Many of us are walking around carrying the weight of emotions that were never meant to define us. Pain from the past, rejection from relationships, disappointment from doors that didn't open. All of these things have a way of whispering to us, telling us we are not enough, that we are not loved, that maybe we are even undeserving of love. But I came to break that lie today. You are loved for a reason, and that love is not something you have to earn. It is something that has already been given. Too often, we live by how we feel in the moment instead of the truth that has always been there. And the danger in that is that feelings are unstable. They shift, they change, they react. One moment you feel confident, the next insecurity creeps in. One moment you feel hopeful, and the next disappointment makes you question everything. But family, let me tell you something. Your worth is not on trial. It does not rise and fall based on the highs and lows of life. It was established long before you ever had the ability to doubt it. I want you to take a moment and think about the last time you felt overwhelmed by a negative emotion. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was shame, maybe it was loneliness. Now ask yourself, was that feeling telling you the truth? Or was it simply reflecting the weight of the moment you were in? See, the problem is not that we feel negative emotions. The problem is when we allow those emotions to dictate how we see ourselves. When we internalize them, we start building an identity around them. We say, I am unloved, instead of I feel unloved. We say, I am a failure, instead of I experienced failure. There is a difference between a moment and a mindset. And too often we turn moments into mindsets that keep us bound. But today I want you to reclaim the truth. You are not your feelings. You are not your failures. You are loved for a reason. When God looks at you, He does not see the weight of your emotions. He sees the depth of His love for you. He sees the masterpiece He created, the purpose He placed inside of you, the destiny He designed before you even took your first breath. And that means His love is not conditional. It's not based on how well you perform, how strong you feel, or how much you get right. His love is the constant in a world full of variables. Some of us have been carrying emotions that have clouded our vision for too long. We have let rejection speak louder than God's acceptance. We have let pain drown out His promises. But today, we are shifting. We are stepping into a greater awareness of what is true, and we are choosing to believe it, even when our feelings try to tell us otherwise. So what does that look like? It looks like waking up and reminding yourself that you are loved, even when you don't feel it. It looks like rejecting the lie that your mistakes disqualify you from love. It looks like silencing the voice that says you are not enough, because the one who created you already declared that you are. Family, you were never meant to live in bondage to emotions that were only meant to be processed, not possessed. You were never meant to carry burdens that love has already lifted. And you were certainly never meant to question whether or not you are worthy of love. You are loved for a reason. Hold on to that truth. Stand firm in it. And watch how everything begins to shift. As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Family, sometimes the greatest battle we fight is not what is happening around us, but how we choose to see it. Because the truth is, negative feelings do not have the power to control your life, unless you give them permission. The way you perceive your situation determines how you walk through it. And if the enemy can manipulate your perspective, he can limit your movement. But today, we are reclaiming our vision. Today, we are making the decision to see things differently. It is easy to get caught up in what's missing, in what didn't happen, in what feels unfair. And before we know it, our emotions begin to spiral. Disappointment turns into discouragement. Discouragement turns into doubt, and doubt turns into distance from God, from others, and even from ourselves. But what if the issue is not what we are facing, but how we are seeing it? What if the weight we are carrying is not from what happened, but from how we have interpreted it? Family, there is power in perspective. Have you ever noticed that two people can go through the same situation and come out with two completely different outlooks? One person sees it as the end, while the other sees it as the beginning. One sees it as rejection, while the other sees it as redirection. One sees it as loss, while the other sees it as an opportunity for something new. And the difference is not in the situation, it's in the perspective. Some of us have been walking around feeling defeated, not because we are actually defeated, but because we have been looking at our situation from the wrong angle. And I need you to hear me. How you see it will determine how you move forward. If you see your pain as punishment, you will stay stuck in it. If you see your season of waiting as a delay, you will grow impatient. But if you begin to see things through the lens of God's love, you will start to understand that even when it doesn't make sense, even when it doesn't feel good, God is still working all things together for your good. Think about the moments in your life where you thought you lost something, only to realize later that it was never meant for you. At the time, it felt like rejection. It felt like a door was closing in your face. But what if that closed door was actually protection? What if what you saw as an unanswered prayer was actually God redirecting you to something greater? Family, when you shift your perspective, you shift your posture. You go from questioning God to trusting Him. You go from complaining to preparing. You go from feeling stuck to realizing that you are exactly where you are meant to be. I know that life has a way of making us feel like we are losing, like we are falling behind, like nothing is working out the way we expected. And in those moments, our emotions try to convince us that what we see is all there is. But I need you to know that what you see is not the full picture. What you feel is not the final story. Just because things don't look the way you imagined doesn't mean they are not working for your good. Some of us need to change the way we speak about our situation. We need to stop saying nothing is working out for me and start declaring God is positioning me for something greater. We need to stop saying, I don't know if I'll ever be free from this, and start declaring God is already making a way. Because the moment you change how you see it, you change how you experience it. The moment you shift from focusing on what's missing to recognizing what God is still doing, you take back your power. So today I want to challenge you. Shift your perspective. Stop looking at your life through the lens of lack and start seeing it through the lens of love. Stop focusing on what you don't have and start thanking God for what is already in motion. Because when you shift your vision, you shift your future. And family, your future is filled with love, purpose, and everything God has promised you. As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Family, I need you to hear me. Every negative emotion is rooted in a lie. Somewhere along the way, a false narrative was planted, and over time, it started to feel like truth. The weight of insecurity, the sting of rejection, the cycle of fear. They all begin with a lie that was spoken, believed, and accepted. But just because something has been with you for a long time doesn't mean it belongs to you. Some of us have been carrying thoughts that were never meant to take up space in our minds. And today, we are confronting them. Think about this. When God created you, He spoke truth over you. He declared that you were fearfully and wonderfully made, that you were set apart, that you were loved beyond measure. But the enemy has been working since day one to rewrite that narrative. He wants you to believe that you are not enough, that you are unworthy, that you are unseen. And if he can get you to believe the lie, he can get you to live beneath the truth. But today we are uprooting every lie that has tried to take hold of your identity. Some of us have been living under the weight of words that were never meant to define us. Maybe someone told you that you would never amount to anything, and you started to believe it. Maybe life has thrown so much disappointment your way that you started to believe you weren't worthy of good things. Maybe the pain of rejection made you feel like you were unlovable. But family, let me tell you, just because someone said it, just because life has been hard, just because you have struggled, does not mean that it is true. The only voice that has the authority to define you is the voice of the one who created you. And what does God say about you? He says you are chosen. He says you are His. He says nothing can separate you from His love. But the problem is we often hold on to the lies longer than we hold on to the truth. We replay words that hurt us more than we repeat words that heal us. We dwell on our failures more than we meditate on God's faithfulness. And the longer we entertain the lies, the deeper they take root. But today, we are making a decision. We are replacing the lies with truth. Every time insecurity tries to rise up, you declare, I am made in the image of God. Every time fear tries to take hold, you remind yourself, God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Every time you feel unseen, you hold on to the truth. God knows me, He sees me, and He has a plan for me. Because the only way to overcome the lies is to fill yourself with truth until the lies no longer have room to exist. Some of us have been waiting for the feeling to change before we start believing the truth. But family, belief comes before the feeling. You don't wait to feel love before you believe you are loved. You don't wait to feel worthy before you believe you are worthy. You stand on the truth even when your emotions haven't caught up yet. Because feelings change, but truth remains. I know it's not always easy. When life has conditioned you to expect rejection, it's hard to believe in unconditional love. When failure has been your experience, it's hard to believe in grace. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it's impossible. Every day you have a choice. You can choose to let the past define you, or you can choose to step into the truth of who you are. And the truth is, you are loved for a reason, not by accident, not by obligation, but because you were created by love, for love, to walk in love. So today, let the lies fall away. Let the false narratives lose their hold. Stand in the truth of who you are and watch how everything begins to shift. As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Family, love is not just something we receive, it is something we walk in, something we live by. And the challenge with love is that it doesn't always feel easy. It's easy to love when things are good, when people are kind, when life is going the way we expect. But what about when things are hard? What about when people disappoint us? What about when life brings pain instead of joy? See, love is not tested in the moments that are convenient. Love is tested in the moments that require sacrifice. And if we are going to overcome negative emotions, we have to make a decision. We must choose love, even when it's hard. Because here's the truth, love is a weapon. Love is what breaks chains. Love is what silences the voice of the enemy. Love is what heals what was once broken. The enemy knows that if he can keep us bound in offense, in bitterness, in unforgiveness, then he can keep us from walking in the fullness of what God has for us. But when you choose love, you disrupt every plan that was meant to keep you stuck. When you choose love, you take back control from every negative emotion that tried to lead you. It's easy to justify bitterness. It's easy to hold on to anger and say, but you don't know what they did to me. And you're right, I don't. But I do know that holding on to the weight of what they did will only delay the healing that is meant to be yours. Some of us have been waiting to feel like forgiving before we forgive. But hear me, love is not a feeling, love is a choice. And sometimes you have to choose love before your heart catches up to it. Choosing love does not mean you ignore pain. It does not mean you excuse what was wrong. It means you refuse to let what hurt you define you. It means you recognize that the same grace that covered you is the same grace that can cover them. It means you decide that no matter what happened, your heart will not be a home for bitterness. And family, this doesn't just apply to others. It applies to you too. Some of us are struggling not because we can't forgive others, but because we can't forgive ourselves. We are walking around carrying shame, carrying guilt, carrying the weight of our past as if love hasn't already redeemed us. But if God has forgiven you, why are you still punishing yourself? If God has called you worthy, why are you still doubting it? You cannot walk in love if you do not first receive it for yourself. Some of us have been so used to rejection that love feels foreign, so used to pain that peace feels unnatural. But hear me. Just because love feels unfamiliar doesn't mean it's not for you. Just because peace feels uncomfortable doesn't mean you don't deserve it. Some of us have been in survival mode for so long that we don't even know how to embrace love when it's right in front of us. But today, I want to remind you, you were made for love. You were created in love, by love, to experience love in its fullest form. And that means you don't just receive love, you live in it, you walk in it, you extend it, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, even when everything in you wants to hold on to the pain. Because love is the key that unlocks freedom. Love is the bridge that leads to healing. Love is what allows you to move forward unburdened and unchained. So today, let love lead. Let love be louder than your fear, stronger than your pain, greater than your disappointment. Walk in it, live in it, and watch how it changes everything.